Thank you for watching this video overview of the integration between OnlineDraft and Sport Engine. Sport Engine customers can now import their athletes and teams into OnlineDraft, build their teams in OnlineDraft, and then return completed rosters back to Sport Engine. Before you can do all this, let's just make sure you have what you need on the Sport Engine site. First of all, you need a Sport Engine account with webmaster access to the sites you want to work with. You also need an enabled or disabled registration to import your athletes. And lastly, you need a league, season, and subseason with teams associated to that subseason to be able to import teams. If you have those things in place, you can get started with OnlineDraft. At the OnlineDraft website, you need to sign up for an account with your name and email address. Once you've done that, you can log in. When you've logged in, you'll see an option to create a group. We'll select Create a New Group, enter a name for our group, and then we'll tell the system what we're drafting. In this case, we're of course drafting players or people. The next screen asks us to import our players. Typically this is done from a CSV file, but we have a Sport Engine account, so we'll click on the link to import players from Sport Engine. Now we need to authenticate our Sport Engine account. So we'll click on this link, enter our credentials on the Sport Engine side, and then we'll be sent back to OnlineDraft after approving the connection. With the connection made, we can get started. So first thing we need to do is select the Sport Engine site we want to work with. We'll select the site, and now that's in place, and we can import our players or our teams. Before we do that, I want to point out now that our Sport Engine account is linked off the Overview tab from this group. If we ever need to return to our Sport Engine integration, just go to the Overview tab and click on the Sport Engine link. It's also available under the Players tab as well. Okay, let's import some players. I'll click on the Import Players button, and then I'm going to select the registration we're going to use. This registration is called Next Season. Then I'll click on Get Players, and here are all the players for that registration. If needed, I can filter by birth date. We can limit here to everybody born in 2005. And once you change this date range, the number of athletes available to import is going to change. We'll expand it again so we have more players to work with. Now to import selected players, click on the Import Selected Players button. Now we can click on View and Manage Players, and we can see all the players that we just imported. In the left-hand column, it shows that these are imported from Sport Engine. Also note that you can change the column headers if needed. Now that we have some players added, let's add some coaches. We'll click on the Coaches tab. Since this group has been linked to a Sport Engine account, we have a button here that says Add Sport Engine Team. So now we'll select our league, our season, and the subseason we want to work with. And the teams for that subseason will now show up. We're going to work with the Bears, Monkeys, and Tigers. So we'll select those and then import those selected teams. So now that they're imported, we can go and manage the coaches. If you want to allow real people to make picks for these teams, you need to add the real coaches to this group and then assign these imported teams to them. This is an optional step, and you certainly can just assign players to these imported teams and still send the completed rosters back to Sport Engine. For this demo, let's add some real coaches and assign these teams to them. The first thing we do is click on Add Coach, and then we'll enter an email address and a name. And it's as simple as that to add this new person to this OnlineDraft group. With this person added, we can now transfer the imported group over to him. I clicked on the link that says Replace with a Real Coach, and it tells us to add a coach, which we already did, and then click the Yes button in the In Draft column. Let's do that. So we're going to change the Bears over to Bill here. And we'll click on the Yes in the Bears row, and then we'll select Bill. And then we'll remove this placeholder coach, and now we can see that Bill is now assigned to the Bears for the Sport Engine team. And we'll do the same thing with the monkeys, and we'll send those over to Matt. So now we have Matt and Bill, our real coaches with Sport Engine teams, and the Tigers will just remain an imported team from Sport Engine. With players imported and coaches imported, let's set up a draft. We'll make it real simple. We'll have 6 picks in this draft. We'll enter a start time for our draft at some point in the future. It's up to you when you start your draft. Next, we'll set the draft order. It's a very simple draft wizard to set up your order. So we'll have 2 picks per coach for our 6-pick draft. There are 3 picks per round. You can set up the initial draft order and then decide whether you have a snaking draft or a repeating draft. But as you can see, it's straightforward to get your draft order set up. And here we go. We have a 6-pick draft that snakes from first to last, last to first. Let's click on Preview Live Draft. This is the live draft screen. This is where you start the draft and where any coaches who are going to make their own picks will do so. Before moving forward, let's look at the draft board. I'll click on the draft board button. And this is what you can project to a large TV screen if you're holding an in-person draft. I would like to highlight the ability to make picks before the draft begins, or slotting players. Often you need to slot players on certain teams. To slot a player for the 2nd pick, I'll click on the Make Pick button and then select a player. And we can see now that this pick has been made and it will be skipped in the draft. We'll do the same thing for the 4th pick. And now that pick will be skipped as well. Okay, let's return to the live draft. And it's time to start the draft. To start the draft, you click the Start Draft Now button. Any coach that's going to make their picks themselves will do it from the live draft page. But we'll switch over to the draft board to make the picks there. Now for this draft, it's an in-person draft. So we'll make the picks as coaches call them out. So we'll pause the draft, and then we'll click on Make Pick for the first pick to make that selection. Now since the 2nd pick was already made, it'll skip that pick and go on to the 3rd pick. So we'll make the 3rd pick. And the 4th pick was made before the draft begun, so it'll skip that one too. And now let's make the 5th pick. And then the final 6th pick for this abbreviated draft. Great, so the draft is over. We can view the draft results, and here they are. Some of the players are still in the draft, but now we can go under the Players tab and select Roster to Sport Engine. And from here, rostering your players back to Sport Engine is as simple as clicking on the button that says Roster All Players. You can choose to roster players individually if you like, but as you can see, rostering all the players at once is pretty easy. We hope that building your teams with OnlineDraft will complement all the great things you already do with Sport Engine. Thanks for watching.